Zat Hashem, we are starting Yud Aleph Amud Aleph today. Today's Amud in Masechet Megillah is going to be Yud Aleph Amud Aleph 11a. And we're starting towards the top of the page. Rabbi Yochanan patach la pitcha laha parshata mehacha. It's about 6 lines from the top of the page, Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. Yesterday we left off with this actually. We were discussing how different Amoraim, when they would start their class, start teaching the Megillah, they would start off with an introduction. So we went through a series of different rabbis' introductions, and today the first section we'll deal with will also be different rabbis' introductions to Megillah, and then we'll have the second section which deals with different Malchuyot. It's a very interesting story, we'll get to that at the end in terms of the Malchuyot. Thank you, Eli. So let's get started here towards the top of the page. Rabbi Yochanan patach la pitcha lahar parshata mehacha. It's 6 lines from the top of the page. 2, 4, 6, 8 lines from the top of the page. Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. Rabbi Yochanan. The first one line is l'Rafaya. Rabbi Yochanan is it's the second to last narrow line actually. So the Gemara says as follows: Rabbi Yochanan patach la pitcha lahar parshata mehacha. Rabbi Yochanan would start the Megillah off from the following drasha in Tehillim. In Tehillim, the pasuk tells us, David HaMelech tells us, Zachar chasdo ve'emunato. We remember his kindness and his faithfulness, when you fulfill his word, Lebeit Yisrael, for the Jewish people. Ra'u kol afsei aretz et yeshuat Elokeinu. All the edges of the earth saw the salvation of our God. So how do we understand the pasuk? Ra'u kol afsei aretz et yeshuat Elokeinu. When did the whole world see the salvation of Hashem, that he saved us? B'yemei Mordechai ve'Esther, in the days of Mordechai ve'Esther, there was a gezerah against the Jews, lashmid la'arog u'la'abed et kol ha'yodim, to destroy all the Jewish people, and miraculously we were saved. So they saw the hand of Hashem. Reish Lakish patach lapitcha la'parshata me'achas. Reish Lakish would start off Megillah with a pasuk in Mishlei. Pasuk in Mishlei talks about different animals which are references to the different malchuyot, the different governments that ruled over the Jewish people. It says, Ari Nohem, the lion roars, Vidov shokek, and the bear growls. Moshe Rasha al Amdal, the Rasha, the wicked one, rules over the weak nation, the poor nation. So what is this referring to? Ari Nohem, the lion roaring, Zen Nebuchadnezzar Rasha. This refers to Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonia, of Bavel, who destroyed the Beit HaMikdash. We know in Yirmiyah it says about Nebuchadnezzar, Allah Aryeh Misovcho, the lion ascended from its thicket, which is the bushes. Dov Shokek, and Dov Shokek, the second part of the pasuk, that's referring to Nebuchadnezzar. Shalom, shalom. Dov Shokek, if you want to get a Gemara, you can get a Gemara Megillah. Dov Shokek, the bear growls. Zeh Achashverosh, this refers to Achashverosh. Achashverosh was Persian. The Persians are compared to bears. The Goyim, the Jews, I don't know. Tichtiv Bey, it says regarding Achashverosh, it says, this isn't the dream that Nebuchadnezzar had. Daniel was forced to interpret. It says, Va'aro chiva achari. Afterwards, there was another animal, Tinyana, second one, Dami ledov, compared to a bear. Vitani Rav Yosef, and Rav Yosef explained, what was this bear? It's a dream he had. But Elo Parsiim, this refers to the Persians. Why are the Persians compared to bears? Sho'achlin v'shotin, we don't have any Persians here. Sho'achlin v'shotin kedov, because they eat and drink like bears. I think it means like ferociously. U'misorvalin basar kedov, and they're also covered in hair. They're covered in flesh. I mean, they're very large, like a bear. U'migadlin se'ar kedov, and they also grow hair like a bear. They're hairy. Don't tell this to Shai. I think we're talking about the Goyim. Ve'ein lahem menucha kedov, and they don't have peace like a bear. The bear is constantly pacing back and forth, moving around. Yud Aleph Amud Aleph. We're holding about 5 lines down the wide lines. So that's the second part of the pasuk, which is referring to the bear, which is Achashverosh, how he ruled over the Jewish people. And then the pasuk finishes off, Moshe Rasha Zeh Haman. It says the Rasha ruled over Zeh Haman. This refers to Haman. Al Amdal, when it says over the poor nation, Elo Yisrael, this is the Jewish people. Shehem Dala Mina Mitzvot, they were poor from the mitzvot. Means, why was Haman given the permission to make these gzerot? Because we weren't doing what we were supposed to. Beautiful. Rabbi Lazar patach lapitcha laha parshata me'achar. Rabbi Lazar used to start off darshaning, explaining Megillah from a pasuk in Kohelet. In Kohelet, the pasuk tells us, "Ba'atzaltayim imacha mekareh." with weakness, or laziness, with laziness, the roof sags. Really what he's saying in Kohelet is, if we're lazy, we don't take care of what we're supposed to, work doesn't get done, the roof collapses. But how do we explain it? Uveshiflut yadayim, and with lazy, weak hands, because we're not doing what we're supposed to, yidlof habayit, also the house leaks. So what does it mean? Because of the laziness of the Jewish people, Torah, they weren't involved in Torah. We're going to get into this later exactly. What was the Aveira that caused this Gezerah of Haman? But here it says, because they weren't involved in Torah, the enemy of Hashem became poor or weak. Now, it's a euphemism. It doesn't mean the enemy of Hashem. It really means Hashem. Hashem always wants to do good and save us. But because we didn't act like we're supposed to, kiviyachol, as if to say Hashem wasn't given the ability to save us. Meaning it's a roundabout way of saying that. Mach refers to a poor person. Like the pasuk says, it says when a person pledges money to the Beit HaMikdash, erachin actually. And it says over there, if he is too poor to pay his assessment, he can't pay whatever it is that he had pledged. We find the word mach means poor, impoverished. Ve'en mikareh lakadosh baruch hu. Mikareh refers to Hashem. Shene'er, like the pasuk says, mikareh b'mayim al yotav. It says in Tehillim, Hashem roofs with waters the upper story, the upper chambers. The point is the pasuk is emphasizing, because we weren't doing what we're supposed to, Hashem kiviyachol became poor, he wasn't able to save us, and there was such a gzeira against us. Rabbi Nachman bar Yitzchak would start off expounding the Megillah from this pasuk in Tehillim. Shir HaMa'alot Lulei Hashem Shahaya Lanu. It says a song of ascent. Lulei Hashem, if not for Hashem that supported us. Yomar Na Yisrael, say the Jewish people. Lulei Hashem Shahaya Lanu Bekum Aleinu Adam. Not for Hashem, when a person stood up against us. So the emphasis you would say is Adam velo melech. It was a person and not a king. In the Purim story, it was not a king ultimately that was the one really causing us issues, because Achashverosh wasn't really the catalyst, the creator of the problem. It was the person. Who was the person? Haman. Haman was really the great Sonei Yisrael. We're going to see later, Achashverosh was not a great Ohev Yisrael either, but Haman was really the push. Right. Rava started off from here. It says in Mishlei, Berabot tzadikim ismach am, when the tzadikim are raised, they're exalted, the nation is happy. Uvimshol resha ya'aneach am. And when the wicked rule, the nation groans. They're upset. What does it mean? Berabot tzadikim ismach am. We find psukim in Megillat Esther. It says when the tzadikim are elevated, the nation is happy. Zeh Mordechai ve'Esther. This refers to Mordechai and Esther. The Chtiv, it says ve'ayir Shushan tza'ala v'samecha. It says that when Mordechai and Esther, in the end, there's the salvation. Mordechai is raised up to be the officer. So it says the entire city of Shushan was happy. But it says when the wicked, it's a pasuk we quoted earlier, when the wicked rule, the nation groans. Zeh Haman, this refers to Haman. The Chtiv, it says when he made a gzeira and ruled against the Jewish people, Va'ir Shushan navocha. The city of Shushan was bewildered, was overwhelmed, was groaning. Rav Matna started off darshaning the Megillah from here. It's a pasuk in Vayet Chanan. It says, Kimi goy gadol asher lo Elohim krovim elav. Who is another nation? The beautiful section in the Torah over there. It's kedai to look at it. Who is the other nation that their God is so close to him? Meaning, so as to emphasize is, the Jewish people, they know that the Torah is really their source of inspiration. They know they call out to Hashem and Hashem saves them. It's only when we're not doing what we're supposed to do, chas v'shalom, we can't call out to Hashem, Hashem won't listen. Rav Ashi started off the Megillah from here. Also in Vayet Chanan it says, O Anisa Elokim, is there any other nation that has done miracles, v'gomer, that their God has done miracles like HaKadosh Baruch Hu has done for the Jewish people? Again, emphasizing that Hashem could do those things as long as we're doing the right thing. Okay, now let's talk back about the Megillah for a minute. It was in the days of Achashverosh. This begins in the Megillat Esther. Amar Rav, Vai v'hai. So now there's different girsaot here. They change it a little bit. We'll just read it straight. Vayehi could be Vai v'hai. Woe and pain, basically. Hadod echti means this is how the Bach actually takes some of this out. Nitkayem masha katuv, this fulfills what was written. Vayihi is vayvahai, is like it was a lashon of pain or struggle. Because hadod echtiv, this is what it means when it says in Kitavo. In Kitavo we have the tochacha. And in the Tochacha, the Torah tells us all kinds of curses that will happen to the Jewish people if you don't keep Torah and mitzvot. And there it says, V'yitmakartem sham la'oivecha, you'll be sold to your nations, la'avadim v'lishvachot, as servants. But the Pasuk says, Ve'ein koneh, V'gomer, it says, no one's going to want to buy you. It means even worse than being sold as slaves, when they were sold as slaves, when we go to Galut, is they sell us, but no one's going to even want to buy us. The opposite is that they're going to say, we're chayav mitah, which is in the case of Haman. That's what it was referring to. The Gzerah of Haman was such, he didn't even allow us to be sold as slaves to the Goyim. It was to kill us entirely. That was the depravity, the extent of the destruction or the suffering under Haman. Shmuel Amar and Shmuel would start off in Pasuk in Bechukotai. Also, this is a bit of an empowering Pasuk, but it says, Lo ma'astim, even though we're going to go into Galut, but Lo ma'astim, Hashem will not be revolted or disgusted by us. V'lo ga'altim, Hashem will not reject us. L'chalotam, to destroy us. What is it referring to? Lo ma'astim b'mei Yevanim. In the days of Yevanim, Hashem will not be revolted. It means He won't push us entirely. Hashem saves us. V'lo ga'altim, He won't reject us. B'mei Nebuchadnezzar. In the days of Nebuchadnezzar, even though we were sent into exile, we weren't ultimately destroyed. L'chalotam, to destroy us. B'mei Haman, refers to the days of Haman. There was a Gzerah, but we were ultimately saved. L'hafer briti itam, to nullify His treaty with them, meaning HaKadosh Baruch Hu says, I will never nullify my treaty with you. B'mei Parsim, this is the days of the Persians, when they ruled over us. Ki ani Hashem Elokehem, then what at the end of the Pasuk, I am Hashem your God, B'mei Gog u'Magog. This refers to, in the ends of days, they call it Armageddon. B'mei Gog u'Magog, it refers to, Gog was from Magog, in the future is going to fight against the Jewish people, and Hashem will save us from them. B'matnitat Tana, in a Braita was taught a little bit differently. Lo ma'astim b'mei Kasdim. Lo ma'astim means in the days of Kasdim, which is the Babylonians. She'amarati lahem Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, v'Azariah. Hashem gave us leaders, which was Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, v'Azariah. There's a famous story where Nebuchadnezzar had them thrown in fire. We know the story. They still were there to lead us. We still had leaders. V'lo galtim, what is that referring to? B'mei Yevanim, in the days of the Greeks. She'amarti lahem Shimon HaTzadik, v'Chashmonai u'banav u'Matityahu Kohen Gadol. We had all of these leaders, Shimon HaTzadik, Chashmonaim, his children, Matityahu Kohen Gadol. All of these people still lead us. L'chalotam, what does it mean that Hashem never let us be destroyed? B'mei Haman, she'amarti lahem Mordechai ve'Esther. We had leaders which were Mordechai and Esther against Haman. And in the days of the Persians, Hashem says, I will not nullify my treaty. Throughout all generations, Hashem always gives us leaders to direct us so that we don't end up being destroyed or losing our Masorah. And when it says, I am Hashem their God, in the future, no language, no nation will be able to rule over the Jewish people. Rabbi Levi said, Mehacha. We started off the Purim story from here. Maseh, the Pasuk tells us, HaKadosh Baruch Hu warns the Jewish people, as you're going into the land of Israel, when you go in, I command you to remove the idolatry and the idolaters from the land of Israel. Meaning, get rid of the Ovdei Avodah Zarah. Because if you don't, what's going to happen is you are going to end up following in their ways, and then because you're sinning, you're going to get kicked out of the land, which ultimately is what happened. The Jews did not get rid of the Ovdei Avodah Zarah like they were supposed to, and they ended up worshipping idols, and then they ended up getting kicked out of the land. So V'imlo Torishu et Yoshvei Haaretz, Hashem says, if you don't get rid of the Yoshvei Haaretz, those that are living in the land doing idolatry, so you'll end up getting punished. And that is the Purim story, is part of the punishment, because that is what eventually landed them in Galut. Rabbi Chia Amar Mehacha, Rabbi Chia said from here, V'ayaka asher damiti la'asot lahem eseh lachem. So Rabbi Chia said, Pasuk in Mas'eh tells us, as I plan to do to them, I will do to you. Again, saying to do is negative things will happen if you're not doing what you're supposed to. Okay, now let's focus more on the Purim story. The word Achashverosh, his name, the king in the story, the Gemara tells us a few different pshatim that are play on the word Achashverosh. Achashverosh was the name of the king. We're going to speak more about later how there was actually a series of kings that the Jews were under There was the Babylonian exile, and then we had the Paras Madai exile that followed, which was connected, but the king in the story of the Megillah was Achashverosh. So you have a few pshatim. First we have Rav. Amar Rav, Achiv Shel Rosh. He was the brother of the person called Rosh, which we'll see was Nebuchadnezzar. Ben Gilo Shel Rosh. It's a play on the words. Achashverosh. Achiv Shel Rosh. That's really what it is. Ben Gilo Shel Rosh. Ben Gilo means he had the same mazal. Mazal is the astrological sign, or the same nature, you could say, the same character.
Gilo is age?
Age is Gil, yeah, that's right, yeah. But in this context, Rashi learns it means Ben Mazal. It's very interesting. He had the same behavior, the same character. What does it mean? Achiv Shel Rosh, he was the brother of the Rosh. Who is the Rosh? Achiv Shel Nebuchadnezzar Rasha. Means he was the brother of Nebuchadnezzar. Now, Achashverosh was not the brother of Nebuchadnezzar. He existed years after Nebuchadnezzar. But it means his desire was the same. In that way, he was like a brother. Shenikra Rosh. Nebuchadnezzar was called Rosh, and Emar, like it says in Daniel, Antu Reisha Didava. You are the head of gold. So he was the same as him in that way. And Rashi explains what do you mean he was the same? Domelo means he was similar to him in terms of his behaviors. Ben Gilo Shel Rosh, who was also considered the same character, Hu Harag, Hu Bikesh Larog. That Nebuchadnezzar wanted to kill the Jewish people, and Achashverosh also wanted to kill the Jewish people. People learn the Purim story, and they could get an impression that Haman was the bad guy. He was the wicked person trying to kill the Jews, and Achashverosh was this idiot who didn't realize what was going on. If you read the story straight, that would be the simple explanation. And the Gemara has it on to say that later. We'll see. But the Gemara here tells us he was just as wicked as Haman, actually. We're going to see. Achashverosh was not just some simpleton, didn't realize what was going on. Haman tricked him, whatever it was. He also hated the Jewish people. He wanted to kill them too. Nebuchadnezzar destroyed the Beit HaMikdash, and Achashverosh wanted to destroy the Beit HaMikdash. Shene'emar, like it says in Ezra, Malchut Achashverosh betchilat malchuto, the beginning of the kingdom of Achashverosh, Katvu Sitnel Yoshvei Yehuda Yerushalayim. He wrote a letter against those who lived in Yehuda and Yerushalayim, which was that they had restarted, very interesting, in the days of Koresh, they had restarted building the Beit HaMikdash. This is before the Purim story. But Achashverosh wrote a letter saying that they have to stop. This was Zerubbabel restarted building it. It was only till the son of Achashverosh, Daryavesh Hasheni, who re-allowed them to go back and finish the temple's construction, ultimately to rebuild the second Beit HaMikdash. So this Achashverosh is no big lover of Jews, that's for sure. Shmuel Amar, Shmuel said a second pshat on Achashverosh. Achashverosh is shachor. Shachor means darkened. What does it mean? The Jewish people's faces were darkened in the days of Achashverosh like the bottom of a pot. Because of the suffering, it caused their faces to darken or become sickly. That's really the emphasis here. Because of the suffering and the pain that he was causing them. Rabbi Yochanan said another pshat. Kol shezochro, anybody that remembered Achashverosh, Amari would say, Ach lerosho, he would say, woe to my head. Means, if you think about Achashverosh, it would make your head hurt. So that's why his name was Achashverosh. And the final pshat, Rabbi Chanina Amar, Shakol na'asu rashin biyamav. Achashverosh, within the word is rash. Rash means poor. Everyone became poor in his days because he raised taxes. That's what he did. Shnei Amar, it says, Vayasem HaMelech Achashverosh mas. In the Megillat Esther, it says, he placed a tax. He was all about taxation. Now the pasuk tells us in the beginning of the Megillah, Hu Achashverosh. It says, Vayibim Achashverosh, Hu Achashverosh. Now it's the same, it's a double language. He was Achashverosh, he was Achashverosh. So why does it double it? So it tells you, Hu birisho mitchilato v'ad sofo. He was wicked from the beginning till the end of the story. It means you might say, the end of the story he came around, saved the Jewish people, and he was a tzaddik. Mitchilo v'ad sofo, he was Rasha. That's the point. Hu Achashverosh. Now the Gemara says a few other examples of this. Hu Esav, it says in Vayishlach, he was Esav. Again, you might think Esav came around. He met up with Yaakov, and they made peace, and think, no. Again, Hu birisho mitchilato v'ad sofo. He was wicked from beginning to end. By the way, Ishmael, we don't say the same thing about Ishmael. We say he did teshuvah at the end of his life. Esav, we don't say that about. The Arab, we say he did shuvah. Esav was a brother of Yaakov, he didn't. Hu Datan v'Aviram. This is Nogea to us in Parashat Pinchas. It says they were Datan and Aviram. What does it mean? Hein birishan mitchilatan v'ad sofan. They were wicked from beginning till end. These were the people that constantly created problems for Moshe Rabbeinu. And this is in Divrei Yamim Bet. It says, Hu HaMelech Achaz. This is one of the wicked kings that ruled over the Jewish people. He was the king Achaz. Hu Birisho. Excuse me. Mitrilato v'ad sofo. Again, this Achaz was wicked from beginning till end. Avram, Hu Avraham. Now the pasuk tells us in Divrei Yamim, Avram was Avraham. Now it says with a hey first, second, and then without a hey in the beginning. So what does that teach us? The opposite. Hu b'tzidko mitchilato ve'ad sofo. He was righteous. Avraham, he was righteous from beginning till end. Similarly in Va'era it says, Hu Aaron u'Moshe. He was Aaron and Moshe. Hein b'tzidkan mitchilatan ve'ad sofo. And they were righteous from beginning till end. This is by David HaMelech. In Shmuel Aleph it tells us, David HaMelech v'David hu HaKatan. David was the small one. What does it mean? It's really referring to his brothers. Of the brothers, he was the youngest. But hu bekatnuto mitchelato ve'ad sofo. He made himself small from beginning till end. Really, this refers to David HaMelech's ultimate humility. He was the ultimate anav. What does it mean? Just as when David HaMelech was not the king, he was younger, he would lower himself if somebody was greater than him in Torah to hear the Torah that person was teaching. Even when he became king, if somebody was greater than him in Torah, could teach him Torah, he would lower himself next to that person. And that's a tremendous thing to say about somebody because he's the king. You'd think, he has to maintain his position, his pedigree. No, he would lower himself to learn Torah. Now, Pasuk in Megillat Esther tells us, he ruled. So we have a machloket, what this word hamolech refers to. He ruled. Amar Rav says, shemalach me'atzmo. Rav says, he ruled on his own. Now what do you mean he ruled on his own? It's amrila l'shevach va'amrila l'genai. Some say that this is a praise of Achashverosh, and some say that this is a detriment, it's a embarrassment of Achashverosh. Amir la l'shevach, some say it's a praise. Means there was no other person in the kingdom as great as him, so he became the king. He was Molech. Others say that it was a degradation, this was embarrassment. Really, Chashverosh was not of royal lineage. He was a common person. This wouldn't be the first time in history that this happened. He had a lot of money, and he bought his way into being the king. So, Jeff Bezos decides he's the president. He probably could figure out how to become the president. The point is, it's probably too smart to want to do that. But the point is that this is a genai. Actually, the pasuk is saying Molech is, he bought the position. So it's not a great thing about Achashverosh, we say Molech. Now the pasuk says he ruled Mehodu ve'ad Kush. Hodu is, I believe, translated today as Turkey. And Kush, I believe, today is translated as Ethiopia, right? Kush? I think it's Ethiopia. I don't know if this...
It's not translated.
It's not translated, right? Hodu ve'ad Kush, I believe, today, it's Ethiopia, I think. I might be wrong. Mehodu ve'ad Kush. So it says he ruled from Hodu ve'ad Kush. So Rav Shmuel is a machloket here. Chadamar, one of them said, Hodu b'sofa olam v'kush b'sofa olam. We're going to see Achashverosh ruled over all of the civilization, all over the areas people lived, which was 127 countries. So one shita says that Hodu was one end of the world and Kush was the other end of the world. So it was saying that he ruled from one end of the world to the other. Now, just to point out, I don't think America was settled yet. So it means he ruled over the settled world, the area that people live. Just to point out, we're talking about 400 years, about 400 years before Common Era. Meaning we're talking about right before zero. So this, I don't even know if people lived in America. People lived in. So therefore, it means 127 was the area probably of Middle East and then the surrounding region. Just to point out. What's that?
The most developed area.
Exactly. So one shita says that that these two countries were the ends of the world, and he ruled over the entirety of it. And one said, Hodu v'kush gabi adadi havukaimi. The other shita says actually these two countries were next to each other, meaning they were right next to each other. And the pasuk is saying, Kishem shemalach al Hodu v'kush, just as he ruled over these two countries right next to him, he was totally in control. Kach malach misofa olam v'ad sofo. So the emphasis is he ruled over these two countries next to each other and the rest of the world in the same way from one end to the other. Similarly, same Melachim, we talk about Shlomo HaMelech. It says Shlomo ruled over the entire world as well. And it says, Ki hu rodeh b'chol evra nahar, he ruled over all those overseas, mitifsach vad Aza. Again, two countries, from Tifsach till Aza. So it's the same machloket. Rav Shmuel Chad Amar, one of the opinions say, Tifsach b'sof ha'olam, Aza b'sof ha'olam. That Tifsach was one end of the world, and Aza was another end of the world. I don't think this Aza is God. I don't believe so. I might be wrong, but I don't believe so. And one, it was one end of the world, and the other one was the other end of the world. The Charam, and the other one says, Tifsach va'aza ba'adei adadi havukaimi, that these countries were next to each other. And Kishem Shem Malach al Tifsach ve'al Aza, just as he ruled from Tifsach until Aza, Kach Malach al Kol Alam Kulo, he ruled on the entire world as well. Now the pasuk tells us he ruled Sheva ve'esrim u'meya medina. It says in Megillah 7 and 20 and 100 countries or provinces, which is 127 countries. Amar Rav Chizda says, why does it say it in that way? 7 and 20 and 100. So it teaches you Batchila malach al Sheva. First he ruled over 7. Ulebesof malach al esrim. Then he ruled over another 20. Ulebesof malach al meya. And then he ruled over another 100. Meaning in the end he ruled over 127, but he had conquered it incrementally, like I explained. The Gemara says, but if that's true, you're expounding the numbers in that way. So it says in Va'era Vishnei Chaye Amram, the years of Amram, the father of Moshe, it says Sheva ushloshim umeya, was 7 and 30 and 100. Shana, my darashtabes. How do you expound that? You're saying there's a drasha. What is the drasha of that? The Gemara answers, Shani hacha dekrayeterahu. The Gemara says, no, really you wouldn't usually expound it. That would be a normal way to write the pasuk. But here, it's entirely extra. Because mechti, ktiv me'adu vad kush. Once you say he ruled over the entire civilization, and we know the entire civilization is 127, so Sheva v'asri mayam din alamali. Why does it have to say this all together? Shema min ala drasha, obviously it's for some sort of a drasha. Okay, let's move on now to the second section. The Gemara here is going to discuss, it's a fascinating sugya, that there were 3 kings in history who ruled over the entire world. Now these are 3 kings listed in Tanakh. That's really what it means. There were 3 kings who ruled over all of civilization. I mean, you had other kings who ruled over their country or a few countries, but there were 3 who ruled over all of the civilized world. So let's see. Tanu Rabbanan, the Braita teaches like this. Shlosha malchu b'kippah. 3 ruled in a kippah. Now, kippah doesn't mean in a yarmulke. Kippah here means under the arch of the heaven. Means they ruled over all of civilization. Ve'elohein, these are them. Achav was a Jewish king who was a wicked person. Achashverosh, the king of Persia. And Nebuchadnezzar. Nebuchadnezzar was the king of Babylonia. Tosafot does point out something interesting over here. He says, Alexander the Great also ruled over all of civilization, but he's not included in the Braita because it's not written in Tanakh. But we're talking about those people that are listed in Tanakh. Very interesting. It's not written. Only those that are written clearly. It's interesting though, Tosafot says, because the Gemara does talk about Alexander the Great. So in regards to Alexander, he also did, but it's not listed in the Braita. So Achav, where do we see Achav ruled over all of civilization? Because in Melachim Aleph, the pasuk says, "Dichtiv Chai Hashem Elokechem Yesh Goy Umamlacha Asher Lo Shalach Adoni Sham Levakshecha." I swear by Hashem, that there's no nation, there's no country that I haven't sent forth people to seek you out. This was Ovadia talking to Eliyahu Hanavi, saying that Achav, the wicked king, is seeking out Eliyahu. He's trying to find Eliyahu, the Gomer. Now, if Achav didn't rule over them, how could he make them swear that they didn't have Eliyahu amongst them? Meaning, Achav made all these countries swear, no, Eliyahu is not here. So clearly he had control over them. He ruled over all these countries. Nebuchadnezzar, how do we know Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylonia, ruled over all the countries? It says, in Yirmiyah it says that the nation that will not dedicate themselves in the service of the king, etc., they'll be punished in some way. But the emphasis is that he ruled over everything. Achashverosh Hadamaran, and Achashverosh, we already said, he ruled over all of 127. Turning to Yud Aleph Mud Bet, Simin Shazdach, the Gemara says, but wait a second, V'tuleka, were there no other kings who ruled over all of the world? But V'ha'ika Shlomo, we have Shlomo HaMelech, I just mentioned him. He ruled over the entire world. So the Gemara answers, Lo Salik Malchutei. He did not conclude his Malchut. This is very interesting. There's a Gemara in Mesechet Gitin, Samachet, that tells us a fascinating story with Shlomo HaMelech. He was able to converse and actually ruled over the Shedim. Shedim is loosely translated as demons. There's some sort of a spiritual entity that is damaging. The Gemara talks about Mazikin, Shedim. It's a similar idea. So, Shlomo HaMelech, the Gemara tells us in Masechet Gittin, wanted to conquer Ashmedai, who was the king of the Shedim. His name was Ashmedai. Why did he want to conquer him? Because he wanted, what's that little creature called? The shamir worm, which is used in carving the parts of the choshen, etc. So, in order to get the shamir, he had to find Ashmedai who would tell him where's, whatever, it's a long story there. But the Gemara tells us there is that he ultimately took this Ashmedai, the head of the demons, into captivity. But then Ashmedai threw him out of his palace and he took over his position. That's what the Gemara tells us. Now there's a machloket, the Gemara is about to mention this, if ultimately Shlomo HaMelech regained his malchut or not. There is a machloket, it's very interesting. So the Gemara says, there is a shita who says he never regained his power, and therefore since he never regained his power, he's not included in this list. We're only talking about people whose malchuyot finished off, they were able to finish their life as a king. So the Gemara says, one second, Hani Chalamanda Amar, this works out, Melech Vehediot, that he was a king, but then he became a commoner, he lost his position. But El Lamanda Amar Melech Vehediot Melech, but according to the other Shita, it says he ultimately got his position back. So Michael Lamemer, why wasn't Shlomo included in those who ruled over the entire world? So the Gemara answers, Shlomo Milta Achariti Hava Bey. Shlomo's not included because he had an entirely higher level than this list. Shemalach al Elyonim v'al Tachtonim. Shlomo didn't just rule over this world, he even ruled over the Elyonim, like I said. He ruled over the Shedim as well. Shlomo was on an entirely different level of Malchut. So therefore he's not included in this list of people who only ruled over this world. How do we know that? Shene'emar, because in Divrei Hayamim, the Pasuk tells us, Vayeshev Shlomo al Kisei Hashem, he sat on the throne of Hashem, meaning to say is that he ruled over the Shedim as well. Asks the Gemara, Sancherib, we know there was a king of Ashur, Assyria, whose name was Sancherib. And it says in Yeshaya, Mi bechol lohei aratzot ha'ele asher itzilu et artzam miyadi. It says, who amongst the gods of all the nations, Sancherib says, were able to save their nation from my land? Meaning he was saying, I conquered everybody. So the Gemara says, yeah, it's true. He conquered everybody besides Yerushalayim. Yehuda lived in Yerushalayim, the area of Yehuda, and he wasn't able to conquer. Ika Yerushalayim, the kavsha, Sancherib could not conquer Yerushalayim. Vayika Daryavesh. Now this Daryavesh, we'll speak more about this tomorrow. This is the first Daryavesh. The first Daryavesh who overthrew the Babylonian Empire. So one second, the Gemara says, there was the first Daryavesh, who was Daryavesh the Mede, Madai. Vayika Daryavesh. What about Daryavesh? We know in Daniel, it says, Daryavesh Malka Katav L'chol HaMemaya Umaya V'Lishnaya. He wrote a letter to all of the nations, the Dairin B'chol Ara, that live in all of the land. Shalom Chon Yaska, your peace should multiply, etc. So it seems to be that he ruled over the entire world. So the Gemara answers, no, there were 7 countries he did not rule over. How do we know it? Because in Daniel it says, Dichtiv, Shapar Kadam Daryavesh, it was good in front of Daryavesh, Ve'ekima Malchuta La'achash Darpanaya Mea Ve'esrim. He sent appointed officers over 120 countries. We know there were 127, so he didn't rule over 7. Vayika Koresh, but wait a second. The one who followed Daryavesh was named Koresh, who actually allowed the Jews to begin rebuilding the Beit HaMikdash. In Ezra it says, Koresh Melech Paras Kol Mamlechot Haaretz Natan Li Hashem. Koresh said, all of the nations of the world Hashem has given to me. So it seems like everything. The Gemara answers, no, really he didn't rule over the entirety of the world. He was just praising himself. He didn't really rule over the world, and therefore he's not included in this list. Okay, we'll stop here. Zat Hashem. Stop here. Pick up from the top of Aleph Amud Bet tomorrow. Tomorrow, fascinating sugya. We'll talk about the timing, the 70 years. Everybody have a wonderful day. Zat Hashem.